Greetings, ladies and germs. My name is Dustin Cormier. Welcome to another episode of How to Rock Astrology. Today, we're going to be reading from Erotic Astrology by Phyllis Vega, your sex secrets revealed in your horoscope. We're going to be talking about what happens when you've got the Sun in Leo and Mars in Leo. Sun and Mars being conjunct here. Lots to say about that. If you're interested, you can also hear more about me on my website, dustincormier.net, or you can check out my book. And this is just a quick little view of the three important figures in my chart, as well as my Chinese chart, just so you can get a little bit of objectivity regarding the person who is giving you this information on YouTube. So, without further ado, the Sun in Leo with Mars in Leo. This is an interesting one. This is probably one of the more interesting sign combinations that I could talk about with regards to the Sun and Mars. There's a huge emphasis here on the Sun and on all things Leo, because the Sun, being in Leo, is going to lean on wherever the Sun is in order to express itself. And the Sun is in a very strong place in Leo. Not necessarily the best place. Before I should go further, I should also say that it's the same thing for the Mars here. When Mars is in Leo, Mars leans on the strength of the Sun in order to express itself. So, the Sun here is enlivened by Mars. The Sun gets a lot out of Mars because Mars, in Vedic astrology, we say that Mars delights the Sun. It's because Mars is very noble. It helps the Sun express only its most spiritual qualities. Excuse me, I've got a half burp happening. Mars pushes the Sun to cultivate and discipline and draw out the best of what makes the Sun what it is. In this case, the Sun is in Leo. Now, the Sun in Leo, it's helped by Mars in a lot of ways, but Mars is very crippled by the Sun here, because it's, especially if it's conjunct and like actually combust. That's a point I should make, actually. If Mars is within 10 degrees of the Sun, or about 8 degrees, let's say, then the Sun is actually going to blind Mars, and Mars will not be able to do the job that it's really supposed to. But if it's farther than 10 degrees, then the Mars and the Sun help each other pretty okay here, actually, because they're good friends. Although, no matter what, the Sun is going to agitate Mars when they're associated in the same sign together a little bit. Being in Leo, it's not too crazy because, again, Mars and the Sun are friends. So the Mars here is in the sign of a friend, and it's cultivating its nobleness of spirit through Leo and through its fixation. It probably has a lot of ego energy here, and the Mars is going to find out how to express the highest capacities of the Sun in Leo. Now, what exactly are those capacities? What is it that Mars is seeking to express with this combination? We've talked about how Mars is kind of the general, the strategizer for the Sun in everyone's chart. The Sun in Leo is using Mars here. The Sun, wherever it is, uses Mars to get what it wants, to express itself at its highest and at its best. The Sun leans on Mars in order to ground and feedback and relate what is the best in the Sun. The Sun here is in Leo. It's in what's called its Mula Trikona in Vedic, which means that it's very intense. It's in its own sign, which is very good. It's always good when a planet's in its own sign, because then it's in its own field. It's dealing with through a reality which kind of vibes to its own unconscious archetype. The sun in Leo probably has a career related to Leo things, probably tries to express itself as what it is, as the sun, as Leo, which has a strong energy, but it can be a little bit egotistical. It can be a little bit stifling and discerning and very business oriented, and it can burn people out, especially with Mars being associated with it here. This could come off as a very almost egotistical personality, or like it doesn't seem to care about other people as much as its own desires and its thing that it's going for, its ambitions. So, I mean, that's kind of always a thing for Leo generally, and it's not always a bad thing per se, because the nature of the sun is to look out for number one, because in everybody's chart, I mean, everyone in astrology is spiritual people. So what we mean when we say that the sun is looking out for number one is that it's kind of like a tree which has to dig its roots into the ground. If it can be solid in its own trunk, if it can diligently dig its roots into the ground, and if it's not being shaded by other plants, if it's soaring up for its own capacity, then it gets sunlight on its leaves and it can produce its fruit best when everyone is looking out for themselves at some level. Doesn't mean at the expense of others, but at some level we should all be looking towards what enlivens us as a spirit, living from the sense of self. Now, with a combination like this, we might see somebody who is really looking to actually fan their trees of leaves over top of other people and saying, sorry, might makes best, as they say, you know, like evolution, baby, sorry, survival of the fittest. This is a person who can kind of be energized by the feeling that they're stepping on other people in a way. It's not the greatest thing for either planet in a general sense, and it can kind of hurt them in the long run if they allow that to grow like an unpruned hedge in the personality, shall we say. But there is something good about it. Anybody who has fire signs will put up with it and be like, oh, that's just Johnny. He's a bit of a nut and he rolls on his own tune. But anybody who's got fire in them, or who has like moon in Leo, or actually that's a little bit too intense. We could probably say something like moon in Aries, or Venus in like Sagittarius or Aries, or even Leo, will be energized by this person's capacity to grab what they want for themselves, and to take it. And it can be even sexy and BDSM-y in a lot of ways, probably very dominating. The Leo sun wants to be known as dominating and to be congratulated for it. And how it gathers that is by being dominating, because the Mars in Leo here is also dominating. Although the sun can blind the Mars here. So the sun might not even be sexually compatible with its desire to be dominating. It might just be very just like energetic and impulsive and ardent and loving and even devotional. And it might get frustrated in itself because it wants to be loving and devotional and completely single-pointedly give itself to every task that it gives itself to. Whether that's a lover, whether that's marriage, whether that's any kind of passionate encounter, or whether it's their job, whether it's their career, and all these sorts of things. Something that might frustrate these people is that they spend so much time and energy on one-pointedly on certain things, and they can't give all their time to everything all the time. And they might be frustrated when a lover doesn't give them attention and affection all the time because they lean on it for their energy. Mars in Leo leans on egotism, on helping its personality and glamour flourish and to be seen as being amazing and chipper and dapper and glamorous in other people's eyes. The Mars, remember, The sun uses Mars to get what it wants. Mars is being crippled and overshadowed by the sun. So the sun nature, the ego, is kind of like so present unconsciously here that Mars doesn't try to dominate. It doesn't actually put energy or intention into it. And so in romantic and relationship capacities, someone might fall in love with the sun with this person, but the Mars is actually having a hard time coming to grips with the reputation and the show and the hot, intense, libidinal, unconscious energy of the sun. When it comes to actually relating and in every single moment being Mr. Dominating Personality in a cutesy sexual way, they might the ego of the sun will come through and will actually be like, I don't really need to try hard here because you're in my bed because I'm the fucking king. So why don't we just maybe you can just suck me off tonight and then I'll wake up and you can make me breakfast in bed. Lucky you, right? And it's this kind of over egotism and taking things for granted that reduces the Mars's desire to combatively keep up the dominating factor, if that makes sense. So I'm already 11 minutes in, and I wanted to speak to this combo in particular because of the sun being conjunct and combusting the Mars. It's possible that the sun can overshadow the real capacity to use Mars and Leo at its dandiest and at a real sexual compatible level. I digress, though. That was my own turn. Now we're going to read a little bit from Erotic Astrology by Phyllis Vega on Mars and Leo, Sun in Leo. Sun in Leo, Mars in Leo. This double dose of fire energy shows that you're a force to be reckoned with. Typically, the lion is an extrovert, but even the shyest of the great cats craves the approbation and applause of an audience. Even the shyest of the great cats. Oh, that's interesting, right? So that's for the sun and Mars. This person enjoys an audience. A genuine romantic from both planets. You dramatize and mythologize every aspect of your life. Your physical passions and sexual prowess are equal to those of the most ardent Aries or Scorpio. But your Leo ego is surprisingly fragile and requires frequent encouragement and reassurance. Since flattery is Leo's ultimate aphrodisiac, nothing turns you on faster than the approval of a loving bedmate. And you might have so much desire to gain that approval, and it's I'm going to show you how friggin' good I can be, that the other person's whoa, okay, I don't really, it's you can scare them off, and that would be bad because that removes your chance to actually do the thing that would give you that energy and really lock it in. If only, this person might have said to themselves at some point, if only you would just come with me to bed and just watch how ardent and passionate I can be and how good it can be. Just give me a chance. But the other person might say, I'm not going to take your word for it because you're too intense. It's just part of the nature of eventually learning how to fasten not just the sun energy, but also Mars, the in-the-moment thing. Because the sun can be inspired to do a lot. But if there's no consistent grounding capacity at the physical, every passing moment capacity, to be engaged in this Mars factor. Not just constant aspirations and dreams to be great, but also being great when someone looks at you and says, are you going to pay for this check? And to say, yes, of course, or, whatever's the immediate moment thing there. Or if someone if you're got your arm around your date and you're walking around and someone comes along and says, hey, you were late for an appointment a long time ago, or something like that, something random comes up that's defacing to your ego. The Leo sun might have a constant sense of like inspiration and ambition, but the Mars here might just be like, oh, like what the, how can you say this to me right now when I'm with my lover? And it makes you look bad, you know. So anyway, grounding that Mars is going to be a big factor in being the best Mars in Leo, Sun in Leo that you can be. I hope this helps. I hope this just gives you a sense of yourself, and don't take it as a bad thing. This double energy can be intense. It can be single-pointed and focused, and for those who enjoy this type of... I've got the Sun and Mars conjunct as well, like directly conjunct. So I still do okay, I'd say. So never think of anything when you see it in a chart as being ultimately defeating. Use it as a constructive thing through which you can challenge yourself to be the best with the given karma that you've been given. Because it's only that much more glorious when you've been given a tough hand and you still win at poker, right? Thanks, folks. I'm Dustin Cormier. Thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you guys on the next video that I do.